to the first episode of Footnotes of History, the podcast that takes you down the lesser-known back alleys of history and guides you to some rather, we hope, interesting points.
Yes.
With, our chief guide, Tim Philpott.
Oh, I'm the chief guide.
Yeah,
now, okay.
And I'll just be the
assistant
excitable
guy.
assistant who runs off and gets lost, and then you have to dig me out with actual facts rather than pure speculation, which I come out with.
I'll do my best, but by the sounds of it, I think you probably know more about this. Maybe we'll cut this bit, but you know more about this bit, know more about this topic.
There's no cutting, Tim. It's full transparency.
Full disclosure. So today's episode is actually the very first. I suppose we should say it's the very first episode, and might not actually end up being the first episode in the series. But do you want to start off, Dan? What are we looking at?
Yes. So today we're looking at the British Legions, and that's not the well-known charity that we have.
It's very. We were talking about this earlier, right? But it's actually very difficult to find information on this because every time you try and, especially online, if you try and find information, it comes up with the Royal British Legion.
They have something a stranglehold over the name now, I think.
Yeah. Do you think that was done deliberately?
I don't know. I don't think so. I feel like they probably just didn't know, and they thought, because if I were them, I would name it after a group of rather mercenary individuals going on South America.
Yeah. So to clarify, we're talking about. We refer to them as the British Legions.
Yeah, the British Legions. Sometimes they're known as the Albion Legion, depending on which people they were fighting, which people they were fighting alongside. They're generally called the British Legions. And most of our podcast today is going to be looking at the early 1800s. Yeah. If you think about the British Army, then I imagine you'd be thinking usually of Wellington, Peninsular War, maybe Sean Bean.
Napoleon. Sean Bean, of course.
But this one we're focusing more on South America. And generally a little bit after the Napoleonic Wars.
Yeah.
And
it's very much the sort of the postscript to the Napoleonic War. There's I think a slightly ironic postscript to the Napoleonic Wars.
It's like a bleak postscript for Spain, that's for sure. What we're talking about today is a group of British soldiers, mainly soldiers, some confidence tricksters, other sort of people who just jumped on the bandwagon.
Generally Romans.
Exactly, ruffians, ne'er-do-wells, dare I say. Going to South America and participating in what are known as the Spanish-American Wars of Independence. This was in Spain's old colonies in South America that had become more and more, their grasp become more and more tenuous during the Napoleonic Wars. Most of their authority and their troops had been concentrated in Spain, trying to keep the French out of their main territories. And sort of in the background, this movement was growing that actually, Spain looks weak in its own home country, why should they be ruling us? And into that mix, after the Napoleonic Wars, came a large number of British troops veterans of Wellington's campaigns in the peninsula, who were then brought over, as we'll see, through many different sort of motivations and reasons to come and fight against their former allies. Yeah.
Do you think maybe we should have a quick general, like a very rapid potted history of what happens at this point what are the general things happening at this point in time? So the period we're talking about is about it's the early 1800s. That's correct, isn't it? It's it's from about 18. I mean, I got on my thing the key battles are 1819 to about 1824.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's when the military happened. Beforehand, from 1809 onwards, we had the growth, the underground. But as you said, the British really arrived in that time in their main numbers. I think.
But obviously this is that's the culmination of their activity, isn't it?
Yes,
before this, obviously we've got should really know this. 1789 French Revolution.
Yes, I think roughly. Yep, that's the 1789 French Revolution.
French Revolution, which obviously completely threw Europe into turmoil, and then the Napoleonic Wars, which obviously involved
everyone.
Napoleon invading and taking over Spain, which, as you say, weakened their hold on their own empire, basically in South America, which had been. We should probably point out that had been in place for about 200 years.
I think it's probably one of the oldest continental empires. It's definitely the first.
The grand old empire, I think.
Yes.
And obviously this is sort of like almost the end of the empire, actually. This is like the end of that.
The end of so now we know why the wars were happening. We know what was happening in Europe at that time. But why were the British getting involved? Why were these thousands of soldiers travelling from Britain to South America to actually fight their former allies?
I thought it was quite important to point out here, actually, in what we might refer to as Philpott's 19th century, the long view. There's quite a lot of this kind of sort of nationalist kind of sentiment, and nationalist sentiment, but also what do they call it? The emancipation of man.
Oh, yeah.
So basically, people were more sympathetic to their fellow man, essentially. So I mean, it's a theory that quite a lot of people went from Britain to fight in the Spanish colonies for the to liberate them, because they had some kind of sympathy with their
transatlantic cousins.
More of a
downtrodden.
Yeah, the sympathy with with those who were being ruled over, essentially. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. As we discussed earlier, I'm not sure whether that's actually true. I mean, what do you think of that?
Well, I think it's an interesting point. I'm not entirely sure how much. If you're a soldier who's just been cut loose from the army after a couple of decades of war, I'm not sure if you're thinking more about your command rather than more just about how to feed yourself. I think that maybe for sort of certainly the sort of just general rank and file, maybe that would be a motivator. But I think the officer class
could be
potentially they were quite well read, quite literate. They'd come into contact with these ideas of liberal ideas, and they thought actually this could be why we're going. Perhaps.
Yeah. And then I think that's a key point. I think it's sort of very. Well, I would say it's quite difficult to argue that at this point in time, the very early 1800s, like the average soldier, especially the soldiers, given that I mean, how would we describe them? They're not because it's not a conscription army, is it? It's basically anybody who's. Well, it's almost like the no-hopers of the British population, one might say, which is
the scum of the earth.
Yeah, the scum of the earth, one might say.
A well-known general did call them.
Yeah. So I don't think there'd be that much interest in intellectual concept of freedom and nationalism. But
I don't think we can fully discount it. I think during the time there was a lot of propaganda coming over, and we had representatives of the revolutionaries and the rebels coming to Britain. So I think. For some people, definitely, but I think you're very well correct in saying that for the majority, it probably wasn't their main concern at that time. Probably wasn't freeing their South American
cousins. I don't know what you have next on your list. Would you like to talk about the Black Legend?
Yes, I think we would like to talk about the Black Legend.
Okay, so what's the Black Legend?
Oh, I was hoping you were going to say that.
Oh, okay, yeah, sorry. This feeds into what we were just sort of discussing about the motivation for at least the sort of middle and officer classes. Maybe some of the lower classes as well, but depending on what their attitude, over for a very long time, maybe they would have got this through. I don't know really. I guess how would you? I'm trying to think of a way that somebody who doesn't read newspapers or books or interact with intellectuals would ever hear about this kind of thing.
Yeah, well, I think one thing we definitely can't forget about time is sort of rumour mongering, fear mongering, that type of thing. There's always been that fear of the other. I mean, we see it throughout history continually. This fear, especially in certain countries, fear of outsiders, foreigners, as they were termed then, aliens as well. This fear that you don't come into contact with them very much, you don't have that much knowledge of them. But there's still that sort of residing sort of they're different to us. We don't really trust them. They're a different brand of Christianity from us. Spanish people for sure. Of course, England and Spain have this historic rivalry dating back to past the Elizabethan times. Imagine most people at that time still have
those kind
this
of
Spanish Armada, that type of thing, taught to them, or at least they'd heard about it, and they still had this probably fear of this Spanish ogre type of character, perhaps.
I'm struggling there. Okay. What was I going to say? So I think that's what you were saying about rumour mongering and that kind of thing. I think that's definitely part of the Black Legend's theme. The Black Legend is it's a sort of difficult to describe, but it's a combination of things. First of all, describe what it actually is. Basically, a stream of negative press, I would say, propaganda, negative news, and negative interpretations of what Spain does, is, and who Spain are, who the Spaniards are, and what they're like. Motivated by I would say three things. One of them is semi-truthful. The Spanish Inquisition and the treatment of their colonies is, it's not exactly. I don't think it's any different to anybody else's, to be fair, at the time, but pretty bad. The second one is sort of the rivalry and deliberate political propaganda of rival European powers who want to dislodge Spain and undermine them as an empire. And the third one being, as we sort of discussed earlier, sort of semi-racism, where Spain wasn't considered, because of in the Middle Ages, I would say, what is it, like sort of roughly half of Spain was controlled by
the Moors, as they
were called at the time, and then there was sort of an Islamic kind of empire essentially.
There was, and then there's the Conquista, I think it was called, where the Christians gradually pushed them back across the Straits of Gibraltar and that type of area and conquered it back, but there's still, I imagine,
a sort of residual distrust basically that was based on that kind of, almost considered like a kind of as we said, like sort of semi-racist distrust towards Spaniards because of this historical event. And then obviously, so bringing that to a conclusion, the Black Legend, incorporating all those three topics, those three themes, could have encouraged more people to fight against the Spaniards in the colonies.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we've got, from that, we've got genuine support from, on the one hand, from some of them. We've got fear and just general dislike of Spain as well, as being a motivator. I think one other thing we probably can't forget about is this image of South America as a country of gold, country of riches, where wealth is made as well.
Right,
so you've got people who are quite impressionable, looking for, as we said, they're unemployed, they've just come out of the army, they're looking for some sort of outlet, adventure perhaps. I think that general sort of thing may well also been a motivator. Tales of Aztec and Incan gold perhaps coming back still could be out there. Who knows? Could just be an extra added push for them as well.
Yeah. Was that have you had a look at what they were saying when they were when the sort of the recruiting sergeants arrived in Britain and said, "Oh, do any of you lads want to come and fight in Spain?" Sorry, not fight in Spain. Fight against the Spanish Empire in South America. Was that the kind of thing they were saying? Can we get glory and gold?
It varied. I mean, you have the propagandaists coming over and saying this is a struggle to create a nation.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
You also later on we'll talk about a guy called James Towers English, who was an Englishman. Ironically, well, he wasn't actually. He was mine, but ironically.
That is so classic.
Ironically and confusingly. And he at one point was sent back to raise around a couple of thousand men to come back and fight. He actually persuaded a lot of people to come with him based on this fact that Spain's colonies and the South America was a land of plenty. It was a place where you could get rich quick, and that there was going to be bountiful wealth waiting for you. And that was one of the tools he used to lure people over with. When they got there, they obviously found it was quite different, and that they would expect to be participating in quite a brutal war.
Okay. I was just thinking, do you think, we might cut this bit, but do you think there's more, like, in like Indiana Jones and that kind of stuff, is there a sort of like residual element of, we must go over here because there's floor of gold and riches?
I think there always has been. I mean, if we look, I think actually that is a good point, because I think we see throughout history continually being drawn down there. I mean, recently we've had the film Lost City of Zed, and that's again about a sort of an adventure explorer from he was late 1800s through to early 1900s, and at that time South America was still completely, in many areas, unexplored. There were still rumours of these great cities with unexplained and unclaimed wealth. So I think that back in the 1800s, that would almost certainly have been still some sort of it's a land of mystery. It's a land of still potentially a lot of gold. So I think that could still be a major pull factor.
Is there also a sharp?
There is actually, yes. There is a sharp. It's a sharp book, Sharp's Devil, where he goes. I think it's Chile. He goes to. Maybe we should actually wear that in.
So we described the British Legion and why they've done what they've done.
Yeah, we understand how they're motivated. We know there's some looking at liberal attitudes, freedom, helping people establish a country and a nation for themselves. We know that some were looking purely at another form of employment. They've been soldiering for a large number of years, that's all they know. Now they've been cut loose by the British Army, and they're looking for a new outlet for that. We know that others are looking at South America as kind of a mysterious land of gold and legend and adventure. And of course we've got the underlying a lot of it, potential racism against the Spanish, the Black Legend. That type of stuff.
Now might be a good time, I think, to focus on three characters from the British Legions, just to give a bit more depth into exactly why these people were joining up, and just a bit more about the characters involved. I think you had quite a good way of describing them as we were talking before we started recording.
Like I say, we need to add a bit of colour basically to not only why, but also what were these types of people going across. The good, bad, and the ugly was my description. The three types of, I mean, obviously there's more than three types, but just for organisational purposes, to clarify in your mind, three different types of people who would be attracted to this kind of expedition.
I think we'll start off with the good because let's start with something that's like halfway decent. So this I put out as a man called James Rooke, and he was a soldier during the French Revolutionary Wars, which is the end part of the 1700s. Then the wars ended, and he was demobilised, and he started to live the high life, ran some debts, and had to emigrate from Britain because his creditors were after him, basically. He ended up in France, rather ironically, and turned out it was probably a bad move because in 1802 the war started again. He was arrested and thrown into prison because he was British and used to be a soldier. And he spent most of the Napoleonic Wars into 1813 in prison, at which point he escaped and rejoined the British Army in the Peninsula and then fought at Waterloo.
He almost himself had his Waterloo, I suppose.
Yes, basically.
Because in more ways than one. I suppose they won because they obviously won Waterloo, but then he had nothing to do.
Yeah, he kind of had the same issue again in that the British had won, but now they didn't need a big army, so he was again demobilised. And he's a professional soldier, and probably because he needs to support himself and his family, he starts looking around for new work, and he sees South America, and he sees that there's wars going on, and they're looking for new recruits who actually have experience.
I would also just point out quickly that because of the duration of these two wars, I think they covered 30 to 40, including the American Revolutionary War as well. 30 to 40 years, which is almost a lifetime for most people.
No, absolutely, and I think it's probably must have been a massive psychological thing for British soldiers who have just, as we've already covered, British soldiers who are coming out of basically permanent employment in
exactly,
and learning no other skills, and then being asked to find a new job.
Just going sling your hook.
And so James Rooke joined the revolutionaries. He was assigned to the staff of Simon.
Revolutionaries in South America.
Yes, in South America. He was assigned to the staff of Simon Bolivar, who was the kind of like at the moment he's seen as the very sort of almost messiah figure of South American.
He's the figurehead of the revolutionaries in South America.
And Bolivia is named after him.
Of course.
So he was obviously a good man to be around because he could promote people, and this is what happened to Rooke because he proved himself in battle. And he was put in charge of a unit of cavalry. Throughout the campaigns, he fought bravely. He was wounded twice and took part in a number of battles. The key battle, I think, for him is the Battle of Vargas, which is also known as the Vargas Swamp Battle, which I think sounds quite horrific because fighting in the middle of a swamp.
Considering most, at the time, presumably these are sort of. Traditionally, this is sort of pitched battle, the period of pitched battles, where you pick the battlefield as an open plain where you gain advantage over your opponent. Doesn't sound like this is happening here.
No, not at all. Basically, I think the other issue was that the Spanish actually had the high ground, and this is where Rooke actually got his opportunity, because the Spanish had the high ground. They were pushing the revolutionaries back in several areas, and Bolivar turned to Rooke and the British Legion to basically take the position that the Spanish had. So the British Legion charged uphill into almost just unrelenting musket and cannon fire, just raining down on them. They managed to take the position and sort of turned the battle because along with a couple of other counterattacks, and it put the Spanish on the back foot, and then from that point the revolutionaries managed to push them back. Unfortunately, Rooke was injured quite badly during the battle, and he had to have his arm amputated. And I think this is probably one of the more colourful anecdotes we have. In that, as it was amputated, he grabbed the arm and shouted, "Long live the fatherland!" When he was asked which fatherland he meant,
considering presumably because he was also Irish. Wasn't he? He was in the British Army. Well, it wasn't in the British Army, but he was fighting for the British legions. And he was also Irish, and he was in South America.
So they're obviously quite used to what he was talking about. And he said between England or Ireland, and he said neither the land which I'll be buried in, which he obviously meant in South America. Unfortunately, that sort of became quite crushingly true, in that he died very shortly afterwards and was buried there. But to this day, his reputation does live on. There's a couple of statues of him in South America. One at the site of his death after the battle, and also a Colombian infantry unit is still named in his honour. So I think this is definitely the good aspect of it. He's a professional soldier. He did his job. He was clearly a good soldier. And very brave as well. So that's the good aspect, then looking at the bad,
slightly more shady.
Yeah, I think shady is definitely the word for this man. And we mentioned him before, and this is a man called James Towers English. I don't know if he was Irish, given his name, but so Towers English was born in Dublin. He was originally a horse trader and clerk, and he supplied the British Army with horses. Interestingly, in the middle of a war, being a person who's supplying the army, he managed to go bankrupt.
Well, I think there's an interesting thing here because I don't want to. But basically, to cut a long story short, because the peninsula, the Spanish peninsula, where most of the British were fighting, was so hilly and mountainous, there wasn't much use for cavalry, and also, I think it was very difficult to transport them. Yeah. So maybe that's one of the reasons they weren't really. Huge demand.
That's true.
Yeah,
I think that's what you were saying. Although when at Waterloo, when the Scots guys kind of went a bit wild, that's the reason to extent have been able to fight properly.
For ages,
20 years, so this is their time to shine.
Yeah, and they make the most of it. By charging completely off the
onto Paris at the time. He obviously after he went bankrupt, he was looking for new employment, and during this time, various representatives of the revolutionaries, or the patriots that they called themselves, were coming to Ireland and England and were sort of canvassing for supporters, canvassing for volunteers. And
were these South American?
Yeah, they're South American.
Or were they British employed by South American?
Well, as we'll see in a bit, they were kind of a bit of both. At this point, I think they're mainly South American. Yeah. But as the war went on, more British people did go back to try and then round up more of their own countrymen to come out. Yeah. But at this point, it was mainly South Americans, and he made contact with one of these representatives and basically lied through his teeth. He said that he'd been a cavalry officer, and off the back of this, he was made a captain. And then even better, on the voyage over, he was made into a lieutenant colonel. Oh wow! So it's a meteoric rise to the ranks.
Doing almost nothing.
Absolutely.
Well, maybe he told a few more stories on the journey.
Potentially,
that managed to get him promoted further.
So similar to Rook, actually, when he arrived, he was attached to Bolivar's staff, presumably because Bolivar thought he was getting this hardened cavalry officer who could advise him on tactics.
I'm always kind of slightly surprised that the Spanish managed to lose this, their empire, considering how many
ragtag
people. Because it seems to be like completely bogus soldiers. The British legions had in their ranks.
I think to be fair to him, slightly fair to him, I think it seems to have been generally, when he got there and started fighting, quite competent at it. He was, as with the Rook, he distinguished himself in a few battles, and he then was made into a full colonel because of his battle context. So, I mean, he lied to begin with, but maybe he censored himself that he could be a soldier. But either way, his conduct from here on in, really, after he becomes a colonel, sort of veers back towards the bad. Because, as you brought up earlier, as the war went on, British soldiers were being sent back to Britain to look through their own basically countrymen and try and entice them back out. And this is what Towers English was basically assigned to do. After being a colonel, he was promised that if he got a contingent of British and Irish soldiers to come back with him, he would be given £50 a head for every man. So £50 in those days was lots of money. And so this is not even just for trained officers, just for every man he brought back, he get £50. And if he brought back a good amount, he'd be promoted to a general. So he went back to Britain and Ireland, and he basically, again, spun a huge web of lies to these people. He said that they would get a third more pay than they would have done in the British Army. He said that there'd be more money in land at the end of the campaign, so that they become landowners. They'd have a plot of land to make their own. And then he talked about this South America as being not this sort of war-strewn hellscape. It was this land, to him, was this land of opportunity. Promises, riches were beyond belief, and so he managed to round up around 1,000 men who basically had this false hope of.
Well, presumably they were also quite desperate considering the situation.
Similar to,
as we said about
Rook, and so as I said earlier in the episode, they were looking for work, and all they knew was soldiering. Really. So they were desperate. They were desperate to get anything, and so this false hope of promises that Towers English had basically spread through them, entice them.
Would you say? I mean, you say false hope. I mean, do we know if any of them did really get rewarded for their?
I'm not too sure, but I think the more to the point is though that I don't think he.
It wasn't quite up to the spec.
And obviously he led very heavily on the good elements and didn't really talk about how horrific the march over mountain tops and battles in the swamps and stuff like that.
I mean, presumably, historically speaking, like the biggest killer of this kind of time period in war is actually the disease, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, just forget about it. I mean, South America and
and for this would be like a group of men who acclimatized to Europe's climate, South America's climate, so it's even worse. But anyway, so when he came back, he got his generalship, and he was sent off on a sort of as part of the diversionary campaign to try and split the Spanish up and concentrate their forces elsewhere, so the main thrust of the revolutionaries could hit them in the more important bits. And so this campaign was mainly a sort of, there was weren't too many pitched battles. It was a sort of series of sieges, skirmishes and sieges, and throughout each one, Tow's English's sort of abilities became clear that they were lacking. There was a siege of a town called Barcelona, and it was a quite horrifically bloody siege. But after it, he just lost control of his men and couldn't control them. And the section of the city that the British were meant to be looking after was basically just decimated and ransacked, looted, and pillaged by the British Legion. Yeah, British Legion. And because Tow's English couldn't actually control them. And then things got worse for him at a town called Maturin. Again, it was a very bloody campaign, very bloody assault. And there was an incident where Tow's English was told to lead the men forward, but he stayed in the back, bleeding illness, and this kind of forever tarnished his reputation because he was then seen as a coward who, one, couldn't control his men, and two, wouldn't lead them into battle. And this incident kind of just broke him, I think. He died of illness very shortly afterwards, and some say this is actually proof that he was ill and he wasn't being a coward, staying at the back, and others are saying it was basically the shame of being branded a coward that killed him. So
interesting.
I think he definitely falls into the bad category because although there were some elements where he distinguished himself, he
sort of started on basically a false premise.
Yeah, absolutely. He started on a false premise, and although he did do he had a few good...
Yeah, he had a few shining moments.
Yeah,
definitely. But that was more almost sort of, I mean, not by accident. Well, by accident, essentially. It was like, he happens to perhaps get reflected glory from the moments when victories did come through, but when it really came to a challenge, he wasn't capable.
When push came to shove, he couldn't actually fulfil his end of the bargain, which was to be that professional soldier.
So I can see where you're coming from with that one. So I suppose we should. So we have James Rook, who is the good.
Yeah.
Towers English, who is the bad. Who is the ugly?
The ugly
obviously being the. Well, I think there's nothing about.
There's very little positive about this man. I think he's probably one of the worst individuals. I've studied history at school, at university, and generally as a massive geek, I read quite a lot about it. And I think I would put him in the category of probably one of the worst individuals I've actually had the dubious honour of studying.
That's quite a claim. I mean, there's quite a lot of people who could fulfil that title.
But I think he definitely warrants it. This is a man called Gregor MacGregor. He was a Scotsman.
Yeah.
Who
was he part of the? Presumably he fought in the Napoleonic Wars.
He did. He was in the Peninsular War.
Yeah. I recognise the name actually. I'm trying to remember. But he wasn't particularly senior, I assume.
No, he wasn't. He wasn't senior. He was a junior officer.
Okay.
And he served in the British Army between 1803 and 1810.
Right.
And after unfortunately for him, he had quite a hot temper, and he had rather a high opinion of himself. And so he was actually discharged dishonourably after having a disagreement with a senior officer.
Oh, wow, yeah.
So he went back to Scotland, basically then lived it up for a while on this sort of reflected glory of having served, and didn't really mention why he was back home.
There seems to be a theme developing here on retired soldiers living it up on their reputation.
I think so. But anyway, as a year or so went on, he kind of started to realise that he wasn't actually getting any more glory, and the the broadsheets coming home and telling tales of Wellington's campaigns were kind of distracting from his image a little bit. So he looked around, kind of cast around areas where he could sort of enhance his reputation, and where Towers English saw opportunity to basically get employment, and Rook saw opportunity for his skill set. He saw opportunity in South America for this burnishing his reputation. And so he actually went over there a bit in advance of people like Towers English and Rook, and he was there before actually Bolivar took supreme command of it, and so Bolivar's predecessor made him a colonel, and he did actually. There was a couple of instances where he did distinguish himself quite well. He led what was quite seen as quite a well-regarded rearguard action against an advancing Spanish unit, and kept discipline in his ranks and managed to fight off a superior Spanish force. He was, however, after this, when Bolivar was in command, he'd kind of like, similar to Towers English, he'd kind of talked himself up a bit, and then he was given an independent command.
Do you know the circumstances of why Bolivar eventually took over as the head of the South American revolutionaries?
I know. Okay.
Well, no, it's just interesting how everyone seems to be so they're sort of very, not exactly worshipping, but like, Bolivar's seen as the guy, you've got to lobby in order to get your promotion, which obviously Towers English succeeded at.
Yeah.
McGregor is obviously trying to say.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think he does, in the first instance, he does actually, in some ways, succeed, because he gets this independent command.
Yeah.
And Bolivar tasks him with...
well, maybe Bolivar's just an idiot.
Maybe he's a really poor character.
Or he's just really desperate.
Desperation, I think, probably played in, because you're in charge of this sort of ragtag bunch of people. You're taking them mountaintops and through jungles to fight. These are probably at least technologically superior force, so you'd be casting around for whatever you can find. I think the expedition he actually has McGregor do is definitely smacks of that almost desperation, which is he tasks McGregor with capturing Florida from the Spanish. So kind of opening up a second front in many ways.
It's quite an interesting point, actually, isn't it? Because obviously Florida is not part of the American.
So at this point, we're still within the Napoleonic Wars. And it's not yet been. It's still Spanish held, and I think Bolivar wanted to try and pull some resources away from South America into Florida to try and distract them. And he said to McGregor, recruit some British soldiers. So McGregor quite liked this, because he had, for a couple of years, he'd only been commanding South American troops, and he was quite excited by the idea of commanding British troops. Unfortunately, it all went rather wrong for him, because the mission degenerated into kind of a bit of a farce. Some of the men, around 300 of them, who were being brought over from Britain, were stopped in a port in America, and then were basically held in port and not allowed to leave, so they never arrived. McGregor and his men landed on an island off the main peninsula of Florida, captured it, routed the tiny Spanish garrison that were there, and then didn't actually really do anything else. He
didn't try and fortify.
He didn't try and fortify. It's bizarre in some ways that he didn't really do anything else on it, but he was kind of lost control of his men a bit, and unfortunately.
So I was going to say the Spanish came back, presumably.
Yeah, basically, when the Spanish saw that he wasn't really doing anything, he ran very low on funds as well. He then decided that it was a good idea to start trying to sell slaves to bring more money into his coffers. And the Spanish all this time were looking at him and thought, actually, you know what, they're not fortifying the position, they're not bringing more men in. And they basically prepared an attack and launched an attack. As soon as McGregor got wind of this, he abandoned his men, fled the island, and left around 300 of them to die, essentially. But in fact, they actually put up a relatively good fight. They held the island for 3 months. So I mean, even if he had
really funny,
a halfway decent while, he might have been able to raise a relief force and bring them back to help. But
McGregor was gone.
But he was gone. He was gone. And because he was the only one really to get out of it, he managed to spin this web of lies to the whole command, to Bolivar especially. And say that he tried, but the Spanish were overwhelming. They managed to push him out, and he was given another command, which was to attack a port called Portobello in Granada, what is now Granada. Again, it was an invasion to try and spread the Spanish troops. He had around 550 men, and he
was this a sort of similar story essentially.
It was a similar story. He attacked the town. His subordinates were actually relatively competent. They managed to help him do it, but again, once he got there, he just he didn't do anything. He left. He didn't put proper patrols in place. He didn't fortify the town. So again, the Spanish were like, obviously this imbecile is in charge, so we'll just take it back. And they attacked again, and he managed to get away again. Left all the men to die again, and yet again he managed to spin these rumours that
this was the time when he escaped on the log?
No, this is a different one. I think.
Okay.
Oh, no, sorry, this one is this is the one with the log. It's actually really funny. So he was I think he was actually asleep when the Spanish attacked. They managed to basically walk into the town, I think when
pretty much everybody was asleep or something.
Yeah, there's some people doing musket patrols,
yeah.
and then they managed to basically just wander into the town because he put patrols up and attacked, and then he ran up in a panic, fled down to the shoreline, and as you say, he managed to commandeer a log and paddle out to the boat they had in the harbour, but he got sunstroke or the exertion got to him, and he passed out on the log and was found drifting in the port area by the people on the ship, and once he got on, he just sailed away and left his men to die again, and again because he got out, he managed to put himself in quite a good light, and was given another command, which was to attack third time lucky, to attack the settlement of Rio de la Hacha, again in Granada. This one kind of was a farce before he even took the town, because he planned to attack it from one side while a subordinate attacked from another one. The subordinate attacked the town, realised then that McGregor had not got off the ship.
So close.
Yeah, he only got off the ship, so the town was taken. He then said to McGregor, come ashore, and McGregor refused, and this sort of weird tug of war between the two of them continued, with McGregor refusing to come off the ship for another day, and then eventually he did get off the ship, and sort of, the similar pattern sort of takes shape yet again.
Some kind of,
his delusions of grandeur became kind of overwhelming at this point, because instead of putting the defences up and trying that, he started signing orders as the His Majesty the Inca of New Granada. I'm not entirely sure why he thought it was a good idea.
Was he doing some of the other ones that he was taking?
I haven't read what he was doing.
He may
well have done. I think he may have had a bit more time to start his Inca ship in this one. But yeah, and again, it's not really surprising that this time, yet again, he didn't bother doing anything. And again, the Spanish attacked the town, and because there was no sort of order amongst the troops, they again attacked and found it very easy to overwhelm the defences. Whilst the attack was ongoing, McGregor found the wife and child of one of his subordinates and said, "Oh, come with me, I'll escort you down to the harbour, don't worry, I'll see you there safe," kind of thing. Left his subordinate to coordinate whatever defence they could cobble together, and then took them down to the boat to row them out, to get rowed out to the ship. And as they got onto the boat, similar actually to in Titanic, where the man who designed the Titanic, I think, or financed it, gets in the lifeboat and escapes off the Titanic. He then jumps in the boat with his subordinate's wife and child, and has himself rowed out to the bay, into his where his small flotilla is, and sails away, and leaves his men and his subordinates to die in prison or be captured. Unfortunately for him, this time he was unlucky because he, I think maybe because he had a bit more time before the Spanish attacked, and broke down more sort of completely. Some of his officers basically just.
I can imagine it just being this sort of like just this horrific sort of like just little tyrannical little semi-kingdom that he's created. And all the subordinate officers sort of like.
I always feel like almost like in Apocalypse Now,
Apocalypse Now,
exactly like that, without the kind of like sort of amazing figurehead,
Colonel Kurtz.
Colonel Kurtz, sort of like really incompetent Colonel Kurtz who just doesn't understand what to do. And so some of his officers mutiny and just incommodate a ship and sail away before he gets away. So they get back and say, actually, this man is a complete idiot. He's no idea what he's doing. Orders all broken down. Bolliver hears about this and is apoplectic with rage, declares McGregor a traitor, and says that if he sets foot in South America again, he will be executed. And so McGregor, this is sort of like the end to McGregor's adventuring in South America, which is, cost the lives of probably upwards of 1,000 men. So it's probably too late, really. But
at least it got rid of him eventually. What happened to McGregor then?
Well, McGregor has got this sort of. He has a very checkered history. I think we should go into it in another episode. But
that's
he does. To whet
people's
appetite, he does manage to come back to South America.
Oh, wow.
But exactly what happens, we will leave a mystery
until another episode.
So we covered. I feel like we've gone into quite a lot of we've gone into quite a lot of detail and interesting depth for on the subject of the British legions. Is there anything you want to add to our so far conclusions? I mean, I feel like we should sort of draw to a close and see what we can say. I mean, I do want to point out that this is an interesting period because obviously, as we've mentioned before, this is South American independence. It creates several I mean, it's the birth of several nations, should we say? Venezuela, Colombia, and there are a couple of others as well. But essentially, all of them were sort of freed by
Ecuador and Peru.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that Florida was included in this enterprise as well. I didn't really know anything about that.
No, neither did I. Think, and to be honest, it doesn't, to my mind, seem to have played a huge amount in the war.
Right.
I mean, because eventually, it obviously was effectively bought by the Americans.
Yeah, it was bought. That makes sense.
In the same way that they bought Louisiana from Louisiana purchase from France, they did a similar thing with Florida purchase from Spain, to my knowledge, anyway.
It's quite a weird situation that you can buy a country of something.
Yes,
but anyway, and also, I know there are certain other characters who, in this same South American War of Independence, sort of excelled themselves, like Garibaldi, who we will again cover in another episode. Mm-hmm. But he was Garibaldi was instrumental. He was Italian, instrumental in essentially unifying the country that we now know as Italy, obviously.
So you could say he almost got his physical education and his military in South America.
Absolutely.
Brought it back to Italy.
Yeah, I mean, it was very much a similar type of situation. Mm-hmm. Yes. And in fact, funnily enough, actually, some British Legion troops actually joined him in the unification of Italy. Yeah, called they're also called the British Legions, but they're also known as the Garibaldi Excursionists.
A more romantic name, I feel, than British Legions.
Yeah, but yeah, I suppose that clear. I think that'll do for today's episode. Thanks for listening to Footnotes of History. For more episodes, visit footnotesofhistory.com and subscribe. Or, if you want to suggest an episode to us, email us on episodes@footnotesofhistory.com. You can also follow us on social media @FOH Podcast for Twitter, and we're also on Instagram and YouTube. Thanks for listening.